Hey everyone, it is TK Friday, my favorite day of the week. Today it is Machu Picchu. This is an image by Ken Brown. This is going to be a full edit. You can download the PDF notes on the entire edit as well as the image and follow along with me. So stay tuned. Hello everyone and welcome to the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. Today I have a bit of a challenge here. Ken Brown sent me this image of Machu Picchu and he wanted me to see what I can do with it. It was a bit challenging. It ends up not being too many steps, but I think I figured it out, and let's see what we can do with this image today. Now I started out here in Lightroom and did a linear profile on it and just did some basic adjustments. Sent it into Photoshop. I did a bit of a crop on it. I also use Sharpen AI just to sharpen it up a little bit and add a little bit of noise reduction. And this is the file that you're going to get. It's going to look just like this, only it will have a crop. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, why don't you go ahead and subscribe and click that bell notification icon, and then you'll be notified when I upload new tutorials. And when you do that, that really helps support the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly, because it gets me into that whole algorithm thing with YouTube, and it really helps, especially also if you like and share. That helps too. If you have a submission for a TK Friday, I'd love to see it. All you need to do is go to the description and click Show More, and scroll to the very bottom and you're going to find Contact Me. Just click on that, Contact Me, and we can arrange to edit your image on an upcoming TK Friday. So I look forward to all of your submissions. If you don't yet own the TK8 plugin for Photoshop, it's only $29. Why don't you pick it up and then follow along with me on every TK Friday, get those PDF notes, and we will learn together. Just click on my affiliate link in the description below this video. It'll take you to the TK8 web store where you can purchase videos and so on. But use my promo code DK15 and save 15% off your entire purchase. And now let's do this edit. Now I do have these PDF notes. Go ahead and download them. There's 10 steps. And hopefully at the end we're going to look like this with the final results. So without any further ado, let's get started. I've never been to Machu Picchu, but it looks like a really cool place to visit. Hey, if you've been there, let me know in the comments section below. Anyway, obviously Ken Brown has been there. First thing we're going to do is click on the luminosity mask icon and do my first opening step, which is to always go to a mids 3 just to protect my shadows and highlights from clipping. I'll put that to a color grading tool, and we're going to make some adjustments in shadows, midtones, and highlights. I'm going to start out with shadows, so click on the black block, and I'm going to bring the shadows back to maybe right around here. And already that builds up some nice contrast. And then let's click on the midtones block, and just a little bit of a midtone boost here, somewhere right about there I think looks good. And let's go to highlights, and I'm just going to lift up those highlights just a little wee bit, just like there. Not much really happens there, but here is the before and here's the after. So we're off to a great start. Now for the next step. When I came to step 2, I was having a hard time determining what I was going to do, but I felt I wanted to darken the deepest shadows. So to do that, let's X out of this color grading tool, click on luminosity masks. I wanted to find a mask that would really target those dark areas. So let's start out with darks 1. Obviously, this is going to be too broad, but I like to just come down the line here and stop at a point where I feel that I'm really targeting what I want. Now, I could have started right around 3, honestly, and got closer without clicking all through here, but also I want you to see all the different steps here in the darks that we can see. And when I got down here to darks 5, I thought, yeah, that's targeting what I want. Layer Masking 101 tells us that black conceals and white reveals. Now we have some dull gray here, and I would like to lighten that up. So what we're going to do is we have some really great tools. We have a curves adjustment, we have paint brushes and so on, but I like to use levels. It's really easy to use. So click on this icon and this opens up your levels. And I'm going to make an adjustment just to lighten up these gray areas. I'm going to start by taking this highlight slider and starting to drag it over this way like that. See how everything starts to lighten up? And then I'm going to grab the mid-tone slider and drag it to the left a little bit more. And then take the shadow slider and just drag it to the right a little bit just to narrow that down and maybe pull the mid-tones over. And right about there, I think is pretty good. That's a lot lighter, so it's going to take a stronger effect. And at this point, we have a choice. How are we going to output this mask? Well, here's what I'm going to do, and this is something I like to do whenever I want to darken, and I do this all the time in my tutorials if you watch my TK Fridays. And by the way, I love doing these edits because we're going to use a lot of the same techniques in these videos, but we're going to learn new things as the image calls for it. But you're also hopefully learning how I think about editing an image and, how to approach it and what to use on it. And every image is different. Now, this area right here is for refining your mask, and this area in dark is to output. This is the output section. So in other words, refining and outputting, and I want to output this to a curves adjustment. I'll just click on the curve. Now what I need to do, nothing happens. Now I am not going to touch this curve here, but I'm going to use a blend mode. And what blend mode do you think would darken? Well, if you're thinking multiply, yes, you're right. So click on this multiply icon on the CX or combo panel, whichever one you're using. And just like magic, look at that. Here's the before and here is the after, only targeting the dark areas. And you notice it didn't touch anything behind this front mountain area here. It only touched this area here because this is where all the dark tones are living. This is a lot less contrasty back here. So again, here is the before and here's the after. And again, we're really off to a good start. And now as I analyze the image, I look for the next thing it's really calling out to me from this image. And to me, it's this green area up in here. I think this is really nice in here. And I'd really like to bring up the green and also in some of this trees on this mountain here or whatever these are. Are they bushes, trees? I don't know. I've never been here. Let me know. These trees, I think they are. Now, before I make the mask, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using a hue saturation adjustment, obviously because we're working with color. So let's click on this icon to get a hue saturation adjustment. And what I want to do is be really aggressive here. I know this is going to look really ugly, so brace yourself. I'm going to take this saturation slider and drag it over here to right around 75. And doesn't that look horrible? Yes, I know it does, but don't worry. It's going to all work out. And then I want to shift this tint or hue just a little bit to the right to make it a little more on the green side to just like a +4. And now I'm going to hide this ugliness, okay? Because it's ugly and it's hurting my eyes and I know it's hurting yours. So I'm going to hurry up and click on this icon here to put a black mask on here. Let me explain why I made that adjustment so aggressive, because I'm going to paint the green areas by hand, but I'm going to generate a mask using this color mask generating icon. We're going to make a mask, but then I'm going to output it as a selection, and then we're going to hand paint it just so we can get a little more artistic and build it up stronger in certain areas, have it less in other areas. But I want that extra saturation there that I can work with because I'll use a low opacity brush. You'll see what I mean when I do it, but this is a really great way of just making your image your image. In other words, not necessarily what was there, but we can enhance this image in a way where it's going to look even better than it really is, if that makes sense. Because we are editors and artists. And now let's make the mask. So let's come up here and click this icon. And we need to find a color that represents what we want to select. And I think maybe right about here and click OK. And you can see we have a nice mask here, but it's kind of like gray, a darker gray, but I want it lighter so when I go to paint on this area, it's going to take a stronger effect. So let's refine it. Now we can narrow the color range with these circles up here, but I think we're okay. I think it's all right. So I'm just going to brighten up the selection to maybe right here. I think that looks good. But we can also refine it more by clicking on this levels adjustment icon and do a levels adjustment. I'll start by dragging this highlight slider into the left to right about here. And I'm just looking for that mask to get lighter and right there. And we'll tighten it up by taking the shadow slider and bumping it to the right to say right about that area. But see how it's really tightened up? And it's on the trees. Now, these trees are not as light as this area here, so obviously this will get a stronger effect. But I can build this up by painting on it and then painting on it again, and maybe again and again if I need to make it even stronger, but you'll see. Now I just need to output this mask I've created. I'm going to output it to a black mask, painting through a selection with a white brush. So click this icon right here. And now there it is right there. Nothing's on it, but notice our selection indicator shows us, yes, we do have a selection. And now we can paint. Now I'm going to recommend that we start out with a low opacity. And remember, when you paint over something, lift your brush, you paint over it again, you'll incrementally add to that effect. In other words, the saturation will get stronger each time you paint over it. And don't forget, you can lower your opacity, you can increase your opacity. And with your brush, you also have flow. Some folks like to use flow. I don't really use flow here. I just use opacity. And I'm going to start out, I'm going to try 30% and see what that does. But if you're comfortable using flow and that works for you, go ahead and use flow. But I like to use like a low opacity. Here's a little tip for you if you want to see what that mask looks like, because we don't see it, right? We only have a selection. And we see our selection indicator showing us, yes, we do have a selection. All you need to do is click this icon. This lets you edit your selection, but it also lets you view your selection, and it's very handy. So, you know, I can paint in any of these areas that have lightness to them, even up on this mountain up here. I can even paint in there. So if you want a reminder of what did that mask look like, just click on that icon. And then when you're done, you got to click right here, and that loads that back up as a selection, and it hides the marching ants so you don't see them. And now we can just paint, but remember, we're only going to be targeting green areas, okay? So with that 30% opacity, let's start right here, and I'm just going to paint on here, and you see how I can just, and notice I'm swirling my brush around. I have a very soft edge on it, and I'm just going to paint areas that I really want to bring up that saturation. And then if I hit it a second time, I will add to it. So I'm going to add a little bit more in here. I think that looks good there. I'm going to add some here, paint over here, paint down in this area here. And this is exciting to me, and this is all part of the joy of editing, when you can just paint away and you're like, wow, that's looking really, really cool. I'm going to paint on these trees. I'm going to hit them a second time, a third time. I'm going to come down in here, paint down on this stuff. But isn't that looking cool? I'm having fun, and I hope you're having fun watching this video, and I hope you give this a try, because this is fun. But this is really where we can be artists and really bring things out that we want. We don't just have to take that for what it is. We can paint things in, and that's why I love this paint with a selection. I think that's cool. Now I'm going to work on these trees over in here, and you'll notice I'm swirling my brush around, and again, it has that nice soft edge. So I'm going to say, you know, I want that to come out. I want this to come out, and I don't have to paint everything. I can just paint the things that I want to paint, which is fun. And every time I do one of these, if I do this a second time, it's going to look different than my first edit, because, you know, it's a different day. I feel different today, and I'm going to paint down on here maybe once, twice, and it brings out some of those brown tones in there as well. Okay, so I'm going to paint up in here and over in here. Not much, I don't think, will happen over in here, because there's not much of a, the selection's not real strong over there. And down here, it's going to be pretty strong. I can get up in here and over here. And even up here, I might have to paint a lot, because this was kind of a darker gray. But look, I can bring some of that out too. I'm just going to hit it, come up in here, paint this up, paint up in here. And don't worry, because that selection is going to keep you from painting things that you don't want to be painted. It's helping us. I like to call it training wheels. It's like being an artist painting with a training wheel, which is really cool, and it really helps. So down in here, and then every now and again, shut the layer off. There's your before and there's your after. But didn't that come to life? That is really exciting to me. And if you overdone things, you can pull the opacity back, or you could, right now we're painting with white paint. You could use black paint at like 10% opacity, 5%, and paint over areas. If you went too strong, you can ease it off and blend and do things like that, which is really great. But let's do something. Let's see what this looks like without this mask. Now, if you want to see what your mask that you've painted looks like, click the double arrow here, and there's the mask that I painted right there. Kind of cool. Click this again, we'll see it. If we click this X, we can shut that mask off, and look at the ugliness, right? And turn it back on. But now we've only added it to the places that we want. And now we move on to step 4. And I think for step 4, what I want to do is just darken some of the shadows in these areas back in this mountain behind the village here. just bring it's less contrasty back here, but I want to bring out some of these darker shadows. I think it'll really help sculpt that mountain a little bit. Okay, so I want to darken those shadow areas, but notice something. I have a selection here, and I love these bold selection indicators, so don't get messed up. We don't want that selection right now. So if you click this icon on the combo or CX panel, you'll deselect your selection. Very important, because I'm going to use a curves adjustment layer. So when I click it, if I would have had that selection, it would have put that selection. It would have created a mask out of that selection, and I don't want that. If that happened, no big deal. All you have to do is come up here and put a black mask on it. I'm going to do that anyway, but what we're going to do is put a black mask on this, and I want to darken, so I'm going to use a multiply blend mode. So click the multiply icon on the CX or combo panel, and it's in a multiply blend mode. And now we have to generate a mask. Whenever you have a low area of contrast, I would consider this a lower area of contrast up in here. A lot of times I will use a zone mask. It works well for those type of situations. So click on this zone mask icon, and now we need to find a shadow area. And I think right here represents the shadow area, and click OK. And let's see what the mask looks like. Pretty good, but it's way too broad. But this is something I always do in a zone mask, and I like this. Tighten and lighten. So let's tighten and lighten. Take this slider right here and drag it into the left to maybe right about here, and see how that really narrows that range down. These lighter areas are going to get the adjustment. The darker areas will get hardly any adjustment. And now we can even lighten this up even more by dragging this slider over here. If you go too much, you'll start to lose your detail. And I think that is good. I don't have to refine this anymore. I may just pull this slider in just a little bit more. Yeah, right there. I think that is good. And I think that's a good mask. And now all I need to do is output it. I'm going to paint this on. So let's click on this icon. This will give us a black mask, a white brush, painting through a selection. So we can't really make any mistakes here. I'm going to start with a low opacity, and I think I'm going to try like 20%. Right now I'm at 30%. I'm going to type my 2 on my keyboard, and now I'm at 20%. So let me hit this once. Let me hit it twice. I lifted the brush, and I'm just looking for shadow areas. Okay, I'll hit that again. Down here, over here. And I may go down to 10% now and go over in some of these areas here. Maybe darken the side of this right here to give us a nice definition here where these two sides meet. And let's come down in here. And one pass, I lifted the brush. I'm going to hit it again. Hit this over here. Don't want to go too strong here because it'll look kind of weird. But hit this a couple times, hit this over in here, up here, down here, over here. And let's take a look here. Here's the before and here's the after. And I'll make my brush a little bit smaller, and I can even come into like here, darken this up in here. And you notice how that adds texture. I really like doing this because it brings out textures when you do this, which is nice. I'm going to hit over in here a little bit. I could even come down on some of these areas and hit them a little more if I felt I needed some. And not everything, but just a few little areas in here. Hit that again, hit that a couple more times, maybe in here. And I think that's good enough. Let's take a look. Here is the before and here is the after. But again, we're moving in the right direction. Now on to step 5. I'd like to increase some of this green in this background mountain here behind the village. So to do that, we're going to do the same thing I did on a previous step. And right now I have a selection, so let's deselect that selection. I'm going to get a hue saturation adjustment, and I'm going to do that same adjustment, which is, I think it was around 74. Maybe I'll even go a little stronger there and shift the hue over to like a +4, somewhere in there. And you can see this is the green areas in here that I want to hit. Just some of the green areas up in here. And we're going to put a black mask on there to cover that, to hide it so we don't see that ugliness. Sorry for that. But now it's hidden, and we'll reveal just what we want to reveal with masking techniques. All right, let's get a color mask going. Let's click this icon and let's pick a color like maybe right about here and click OK. And there is our mask. And you can see it's very light. So let's take this adjustment, this brightness slider, and drag it to the right to maybe right about here. Looks pretty good. And now let's refine it even more with a levels adjustment to make it even stronger. I'll drag this highlight slider over to the left to like right here. And to tighten it up, I'll drag in on the shadow slider to maybe right around here. And then I'll move the midtone slider to the left to maybe right around there. So now that's a nice strong selection in there. We're going to output it to a black mask with a white brush painting through a selection. And now we get to paint this up. Now I think I'll start out with about 30%. Let me try that on here. That's too much. You can back up a step by clicking this icon right here or Command or Control Z. I think it's going to be 20%. So 20%, and just give this green a little more green so we can really see that there's some green up in here in these areas over in here. Okay. Lifting my brush every now and then and adding a little bit more. And there's some green up in here too. Even this right here. And that just, I don't know. I think it really helps. It lets us know, yes, there is green here. There's some green things happening. Okay, and let's take a look. Here is the before, and here's the after. Not a lot, but I always like to say pay attention to detail. It's very important. You don't want to overdo things, but you want to show folks that there is some green happening here, and I want you to see it. So there we go. All right, then, what is next? Next, I think what I want to do is add some clarity to this village in here just to really draw attention. You know, it'll just cause our eyes to really look into this area. Now, already the saturation helps us to come into here, but I think a little bit of clarity is going to help. And we're going to do something a little different. I'm just going to hand paint on this clarity. So let's come up to the TK Actions, click this. The selection will go away whenever I click on clarity. You'll see that selection goes away. See that? And I'm going to use a radius of about, right around here, like 28.9%, 30%, whatever, somewhere in that area. Like smaller amounts will give you more like a sharpening effect. Let's just click OK. And if we take a look here, here is the before and here is the after, but it's putting it over the entire image. I only want it right in this area, maybe on certain trees that I'm going to hand paint just where I think I want it. Use my artistic license again. So I'm going to put a black mask on here by clicking this icon. Now we have a black mask, and I think I'm going to use a decent amount of opacity. On my notes I have 10 to 30%, but I think I ended up higher than that. Let me try 50%. I'm going to type a 5 key. Whoops, before I do that I got to get a brush tool. So let me get a white brush, and you can find your white brush right up here in the combo or CX panel. You'll find these icons for brushes. So let me grab a white brush because I'm painting on a black mask, and to reveal I need a white brush. Now I'm going to type the 5 key and get 50%. And I'm just going to paint on these buildings here and on these rocks over in here. And you know what? I think, let me try 100%. I'm going to go to 0. And yeah, I think it can take 100%. Maybe not everything, but maybe on this stuff right in here, down in here. Like I'll leave this out over here. Maybe just get this section in here. Get over in here. Now this is applying the entire effect at 100%. Okay. Then I think what I'll do is make my brush a little bit smaller and maybe go down to about 50% now, and maybe paint it on some of these trees. Not all the trees, just certain ones, you know, just add a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of detail pop on some of this stuff. Maybe on this over here, maybe over here a little bit, back in here. Make sure I got all this in here. Okay, but just hand painting it on. Let's take a look. Here is the before. And now here is after. But you see how that causes us to really take a look into this area. But that's it. Just a little clarity adjustment just to pop out some detail in that village. I'll zoom into 100%. You can click this icon on the CX or combo panel, go into 100%. So you can see this a little bit more, maybe even a little more. I'll click the plus and come in even tighter. Here's the before clarity. And here is after, just so you can really see it. And now we can click this icon to fit it back. And I'm just going to click the minus just to give me a little bit of space. The next step is to add a little bit of mid-tone contrast, and this is easy to do. Come up and click on the luminosity mask icon and click Midtones 1. Output it to a curves adjustment layer. And just to make things fast, simple, just come to the default presets and click the drop down and come to strong contrast. And that just adds a nice strong contrast curve, but it's only targeted to midtones. So check it out. Here is the before. And here's the after, just a little bit of contrast in those midtones. It really helps. This is a good little tip. If you ever want to pop a little contrast, try that midtone contrast. And now I want to lighten the midtones up. So let's come back to luminosity masks and grab that same mids 1 again. Let's do another curves adjustment layer. And this time we're just going to click the screen blend mode. So remember, screen for lightening, multiply for darkening. Click screen. And we just lighten up the midtones. So here's the before and here's the after. And I think that really helps, and I like it at 100%. If it's too strong, you can always pull back on that opacity. Well, we're down to the last 2 steps. What I want to do is work on the sky next, add a little bit of contrast and just reduce its brightness just slightly. So to do that, we're going to grab a sky selection. So click right here in this icon, and that will cause the sky to be selected. Then come up here to My Channels and choose the active selection. We're going to use a mask calculator. So click on the mask calculator icon, click the X for an intersection. I love intersection. I use this all the time. It's fantastic. X out of here. And now, just like in my balance and contrast step at the beginning, I always like to use a mids 3 just to protect highlights and shadows. So what we're going to do is go to luminosity masks and grab a mids 3, and then you got to click equals to make that calculation. And you notice we only have the sky with a mids 3 mask attached to it. And then we're going to output it to a color grading tool and make a couple quick adjustments. I'll start with midtone, so click on the midtone block, and I'm just going to pull this back to right about here. See how it just darkens that up a little bit? And then we're going to go to the highlights, and I'm going to be a lot more aggressive here. And I'm going to pull this back right to about here. That just darkens up the overall sky just a little bit. Here's the before and here's the after. I'm going to do a little bit of color grading now, but only in the midtones. So let's go back to midtones, and all I'm going to do is add a little bit of blue by pulling this to here. See, it just adds a little bit of blue in here, and I think that looks good. Here's the overall before, the sky adjustment, and here's the after. And I think that looks good. And if it's too strong, you can pull back in the opacity. And last but not least, the vignette, just a basic vignette. So come to the TK Actions, grab that first vignette, which is a basic vignette. I just accept the radius for the Gaussian blur just the way it is. Click OK. Now that defaults at 50%, but I will pull that back a little bit. But first, double click right here. This opens up the layer style, and we want to do a little bit of a blend diff to protect the darkest shadows. So I'm just going to take this triangle and slide it over to right about 20 right there, and then I'm going to hold the Alt or the Option key down and split this to add a graduation, you know, a nice gradient, and I'm going to drag this over to right about here, and then just click OK to accept that. And now I think it's too strong, so I'm going to take this opacity the whole way off and then just build it up slowly, and I think right at 30%. Here is the before and here's the after. Now let me go ahead and click my before and after action. Here's the overall before. Wow, very low contrast. I don't know, it needed a lot of work, and now here is the after. And I'm really happy with it. Now, is it totally done? You know, it could be done right here, or you could go in and do, you know, some dodging and burning and do a lot more to it. But I think this gets it pretty much at a finished state, but you could go ahead and do more to it if you were so inclined to do so. But for now, I think we're done. Well, there you go, everyone. Machu Picchu. Thank you, Ken Brown, for your image. I hope you enjoyed this edit, Ken. Well, if you enjoyed this tutorial today, please give it a like and share it with your friends. And if you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, please subscribe. Click that bell notification icon. Each time I upload a new tutorial, you'll get notified about it. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today in the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly, and I'll see you all right here next time. But until then, happy editing.